Morning. Hello, everyone. Going to kick off today. Hope everyone's doing well. Wanted to pick up where I left off yesterday with building a full stack Next.js restaurant online ordering application that mirrors a local website, seafood website here in town, in my local hometown. Just wanted to see if I could build a clone of it, if you will, and based on that clone, if it was something that I liked, could use it as something to take to an actual business and see if they were interested in utilizing. Of course, I need to make some changes, change the security on it, things of that sort. But for the most part, the functionality is there, or it's going to be something that they could use with a full admin dashboard, ordering, being able to see the food cooking process, if it's delivery or if it is in-store pickup, paying with cash, paying with card online, confirmation email, etc. So today I'm going to begin by setting up Prisma and adding authentication to the website, and then we'll resume the after that we'll resume the UI build. But for right now, I think we will just continue on with building out the UI. So let me begin to jump in with that. And I appreciate everyone stopping by. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask in the chat. I'll be happy to answer anything that may be on your mind related to what I'm building or something outside of that. So I appreciate you stopping by and use me as a resource because that's absolutely what I'm here for. Let me see. So I think what I'll do next, like I said, is just go ahead and begin to set up Prisma. And we'll need to add in a few commands to get that going. All right, so let's jump into the terminal and we'll stop the current server and we'll type npm i-d for dependence or development, then Prisma, and press enter. Give that a moment or two to install. Hey, good morning, my friend. Hope you're doing well. Thanks for stopping by. That looks pretty good. I think the next command will be the Prisma client. This is what allows us to access Prisma throughout the application, get access to our models and the schema file, in addition to methods that allow us to mutate and query data in the database. And we'll be using a Postgres database for this project. We'll set that up in just a second. And then the next command we're going to install or use is Prisma init, which is going to initialize Prisma and give us a Prisma directory that will be where we'll hold our schema, in addition to give us access to set up the database, which we'll be doing next. Just to confirm, if we go to the root of the project, you see we have our Prisma directory with a schema.prisma file. And in this, we have the data source database, which is going to be Postgres. We're going to keep that as it is. The URL, the .env, the database URL, we're going to need to add that in just a moment. And we actually can remove this output. We don't need that. So I'll just remove it and click Save. We can close out some of these additional tabs for right now. So we're at a point now where I like to add in auth.js. which is going to be the authentication provider for the app. And with that, I just like to keep it simple and use the Google OAuth. You're more than welcome to use any of the others that you like that make the most sense for what you're building, but I'm just going to keep it simple with Google. So let's go to the documentation. All right. So we'll go to, and this is the site that we'll be building. We've already built the header, and I call this a banner, top nav, and also a hero, if you will. This is what that looks like here. You can always add more padding and make it bigger, but I just don't think I need to make it so big. All right, so let's go ahead and set up our database. And as I mentioned, we'll be using Vercel. Let's go to vercel.com. And I'm already logged in. I am a pro member. I'll read on that later. Once you're logged in, you should be redirected to a similar view, maybe not the exact same view as mine, but certainly a similar one. And from there, we'll click on storage. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, I have access for one more. So I'm just going to create a database, and we'll be using a serverless Postgres Neon. Be sure that you select the region that's closest to you. And once you've done that, just click continue. And then from this window, you're going to create the database. It's pretty much just about the final step, if I'm not mistaken. And here we have the ability to name it. So I'm just going to name it restaurant clone. Click create. And we have successfully created the database. Then we can click done. And I don't need any additional products. If you click off that model, you should be on the database settings or overview window, which gives you access to some sensitive information that you need to integrate, that you need to use to integrate inside of your project. So from the .env.local tab, I'm just going to click copy snippet, and then we'll go back to our project and paste this within the .env file. And we actually can highlight everything within this, delete it, paste in the information we just copied, hit Control S for save. Perfect. So now that gives us the credentials and the access. What's up, Carl Lover, man? I know, man. Long time no see. The early morning streams were a little tougher than I originally anticipated, but I'm back, baby. And if you're still interested, man, I do have the JavaScript Q&A that we talked about. We can do that tomorrow if you're up for it. Let me know, brother. But it's good to see you, man. Long time no see. Um, and let's go to the auth.js documentation. I don't need this anymore. Go to auth.js. And I just like to use this as a simple, lightweight authentication provider. You can use Clerk, you can write it from scratch, whatever works for you. This is just simple and it gets the job done, so this works. We'll click get started, and we're using Next.js, and then we'll start with the next auth at beta npm command. So I'll just copy it into the terminal and paste in and press enter to install this dependency. Okay. And now, next we will need to add a auth secret. And this is mandatory, so that's cool. I'll just copy this to keep it simple. And head back to .env. Add this in. Use something more secure than what I just did. I'm just keeping it simple for demonstration purposes, but there is a recommended approach in the docs that you really should do, installing this, and then it will automatically generate a auth secret for you, so be sure to use it. You too, brother. I understand, man. Understood, brother. But I wish you the best, man. Hope you have a great day today, man. And thanks for showing some love and support as always. I appreciate it. Um, next, let's add the auth.ts file to the root of the project. So I'll just copy this code and head back to the terminal. And in the root of the project, we're going to add a file named auth.ts. And we can just paste in the code that we just copied from the docs. And this is just setting up the handlers or getting access to the auth object, and we're accessing the handlers, sign in, sign out, and auth. And we'll be integrating those into the project here in just a moment. And then now we'll need to add the route handler. And I'm just going to copy this and create these directories inside of the app folder. So we're going to have a API directory, a auth directory, and then a catch-all with next auth destructured inside of brackets as folders, and then inside of that we'll have a route.ts file. So let's do that now. We'll go to our folders, go to app, we'll add a folder, paste that in, and then I'm just going to add a file named route.ts. And then inside of that, we just need to copy the get and post this code from the docs and paste it in. Click save, close that out. And let's head back to the docs. I'm not going to worry about the middleware as of yet. So next up, we will need to bring in the actual adapter. No, I'm sorry, the provider. The provider that we're going to have is Google. So we'll go down to the Google Docs. And we have environment variables listed here. So I'll go ahead and copy those. And we'll paste it into the .env file. Okay, now we'll need to capture the Google ID and Google secret. This can be found in our Google console. And I already have a console set up, so I'm not going to bore you with setting up a new one. So I'm just going to grab a ID and secret from a project that I already have set up. So Let's do that now. We'll go to Google Console. And yes, I do visit this often. And I already have it defaulted to the latest one that I use, Live CrudBog. So I'm just going to go to API services and then go to credentials. Click on, well, we can click on web client in a moment, but the client ID that we need is going to be listed here. And we'll go back and paste this into the .env file. And that was the ID. Now we need to capture the secret. If we click on the name of the project, which is Web Client 1, this is where you would set up the origins and redirect for the website, or excuse me, for the OAuth and everything. Because it's still locally driven, it's going to be localhost 3000. And then the callback is API/auth/callback/Google. And I'm capturing that from this callback URL listed here. Notice that it has the example.com, which is your base URL. In this case, it's localhost 3000, but if it were deployed, it'll be the deployed website, and you'll just add API/auth/callback. So what I need is the secret, and I can capture that from here. So I just click copy, and we'll head back to the terminal, or VS Code, excuse me. Paste that into the secret, click save, close this file out. Now let's go back to the docs for the next step. Let's save that. The configuration. So we need to bring in Google inside of the auth.ts and pass it in side of the providers. And this is where you would list any provider that you're using. I'm using Google, but you may want to use Facebook or any of the other social providers that work for your application. As long as you have something, just remember that you need to pass it inside of the providers in order for it to work. So I'm going to work on that in just a second. Let me go ahead and do that now. All right, let's copy this. To the auth.ts file. And then inside of the providers, we'll just pass in Google. Okay. And I'm not worried about that portion right now. I don't need to worry about that. Email verified. I'm not worried about verifying the email either. So I think we're now ready to add the providers. And we'll be using the adapters. And we'll be using Prisma to help us with the queries. So we've already set up Prisma, but if we didn't, we would just go to the Prisma documentation and follow the step-by-step instructions that are listed there. But we already have that, so we don't need to go through that step again. So we're going to install Prisma client and the auth Prisma adapter. So I'll just copy that. Head back to VS Code. Some space, paste it in. That takes care of that. That's a docs, and now we'll need to do install Prisma. Let's go back to what we have next. Set up the database. We've already done that. We need to add this Prisma function to improve. Using Prisma ORM, we can set up the Prisma instance to only ensure one instance is created throughout the project and then import it from any file as needed. This approach avoids recreating instances of the Prisma client every time it is used. Finally, we can import Prisma instance from auth.ts configuration. So we want to copy this. We'll add this. We'll go to the project, root of it. Do we already have a lib directory? No, we'll go ahead and add a lib directory now. And inside of it, a file named prisma.ts. Just gonna paste this in. We'll close this out. Another second. And let's see, what do we have next? Bring in the adapter inside of the auth TS. And it appears that we're passing in the Prisma function inside of the adapter. So let's do that now. TS, paste that in. And we can actually copy it directly from docs. Go to adapter. Let's paste it in. And we're getting an error because we haven't imported Prisma. So what I like to do to make sure we get the right instance of it is just remove the last two characters from Prisma. And once you type in the M&A again, it should make recommendations on where you want to import it from. And we're going to import it from ./lib/Prisma. That is because we just added the Prisma function inside of that directory, and that's the function that we want to use to create the instance for the adapter. And you can see that listed, or kind of talking through the API route handlers here. And if you have more questions about it, you can certainly read the docs, but it's pretty straightforward and it will get the job done, and that's what we care about. So we'll use that. Let's see, what do we have next? So next up, we can establish our schema. And I'm actually going to copy this because we're using a PostgreSQL database via Neon. And I think we can just basically copy this and paste it in. So let's do that. To this, we'll close this out. Go to the Prisma directory, click on schema.prisma. And I think I can actually just highlight and delete this and paste this in. Yeah, it kept the data source and the client. I think I just reordered it. And I don't need the authenticator. Remove that. I need to remove that model. Perfect. But we do need to establish what models we want to have for the project. So I'm not going to worry about capturing every model that is presented in the app because that would be pretty massive. But what I think I will do is maybe we can start with creating categories and we can fetch the categories from the database. So I think that's what we'll do first. So we'll create a, let me think about this for a second because should we store the category in a separate name of the website and then have the ability to update the name and logo and all that cool stuff? But I think just for simplicity purposes, maybe we'll just add the categories from an admin dashboard, have the ability to add categories, etc., etc. So maybe we'll just do it like that. Let me think about it for a second. Mm, or we could store this in a restaurant model and come back and update it later. So why don't we do this? We'll create a model named restaurant, RESTAURANT. It needs an ID, so we'll just copy this from the user. The restaurant will need a name, and this can be a string. And we do want this to be unique, so we'll go at unique. I'll add the created at and updated at as well because we will want to store that. Uh-oh. Add that here. Now, eventually, we may come back and add in the name, well, I'm sorry, the address, the city, the state, the postal, and then use that to be displayed right here and have it being pulled dynamically from the website. But that might be a little much for right now. We'll just focus on getting it going for the most part. So I think we'll just keep this as is and we have the restaurant name. The next thing I want this restaurant to have is categories. I think that's what we'll need to add. within a bar right here on screen. So let's create a model name categories or category. It will have a ID of a string. I want created at and updated at. And then for a category, it will need a restaurant ID. ID. That will be a string. I spelled that R-E-S-T-A-R-A-N-T. Yeah, that will be a string. It will have a name, which will be a string. Um, will also indicate if the category is active or not. And this will be a Boolean. And then we'll set this as at default. The default value for this is going to be true. I think this is suffice for right now. We'll need to create the relationship between the restaurant and the category. The restaurant will hold the categories versus the categories being held directly to the user. That way, if I wanted to make this a multi-tenant application, you can easily do that as well. But I think for right now, we'll just keep it as a single tenant app with the ability to add all of those cool features and kind of manage the website from the back end, if you will. So we'll just keep this as it currently is for now. So let's go ahead and add categories to the restaurant. And this is going to be the category as an empty array. And then now we'll need to add the relationship between the restaurant and the category. So we'll say restaurant. And then we'll need it to reference the restaurant model. Then we'll go at relation. Yep. And then the first one is going to be the fields. The field is going to be the restaurant ID, which is this ID that we are establishing right there. And then outside of the the square braces, we'll add a comma, and we want it to reference the ID of the restaurant to help create that relationship. And then if we delete a category, we want to make sure that it cascades, or if we delete it, we want to make sure that it cascades appropriately and it doesn't just leave data without having a parent-child relationship, if you will. So that will take care of that. And I think this is suffice to get us going. I'm not going to worry about the owner relationship because it's just going to be me establishing it. But like I said, if this were a multi-tenant, then we would need to establish the relationship between the restaurant and the user. But for right now, this will be fine. It is going to be enough to get us going. We'll just set up the authentication, make sure that we can log in, see the user, create the CRUD for the restaurant. And then after we create the CRUD for the restaurant, then we'll add categories and we'll be able to pull or dynamically pull them onto the page just as we have it with the website. So I think we're good from a model perspective. I don't see any errors, but if we do have any, we're going to find out in just a second. So let's go back to the docs. Let's see what's next. We need to apply the schema. So we'll just copy
this npm command, and we'll paste it.
Paste it into the terminal. city, and we can name this init server closed. Let's push it again. Perfect. Uh-oh. And let's go
back and see if we have anything else there. Generate the client. Also generate the client. If you need to generate it, well, I'll run this anyway. I don't think I need to.
since we just did that one, but just to make sure, because I did give it a second and let it time out, so don't want any issues with the connection, of course. Yeah, perfect. So now let's check and make sure these changes actually took, and we can launch the Prisma client, or excuse me, the Prisma Studio, which is a lightweight interface provided by Prisma, so we don't have to look at the Vercel Postgres database. We can look at the Prisma, which is a little easier on the eye. So we'll go npx Prisma Studio. Yep, press enter. Give it just a moment. Perfect. And we see the account, the restaurant, session, user, verification. Did it not take category? I don't see the category listed there. Let me just keep myself honest. But I guess we don't technically have to have it right now because that's odd. I don't know why I didn't take category. That's okay. I'm not gonna worry about it just yet. We have to create the restaurant and the CRUD capability for restaurant first, then we can come back and add the CRUD for category. So let's go ahead, and since we have the user and restaurant, we can go ahead and add in the authentication for that now. So let's do this. I think what we'll do is we'll shift from the front end to the back end and begin to set that up now. And then we can always come back and build those into the front end once we're ready. But for right now, I think we can just focus on the back end. So let's do this. We'll close this out. Go to the root of the project. Inside of the app, let's shift to the actual dashboard itself. So we'll go to localhost 3000/dashboard, and we'll update the title and the fave icon probably in the next video. It'll help if I actually start the server. So let's npm run dev. Press enter. Just a moment. All right, let's try this again. Go back, refresh. And we see the dashboard layout text because we're on the dashboard page. So I'm gonna close that out for right now. And all right, there we go. So let's go ahead and begin to style this a little bit and bring in the authentication first. I'm just trying to think. So I think for this part, we can have a sidebar in the header. The sidebar will have all of the options like category, menu items, and we'll add in a few other things at a later point. But just to kind of get this going, we'll add the dashboard and the authentication inside of the dashboard. so that we can see us logged in and just kind of care for if we don't have a user or not. But let's add some styling first. So we can remove this dashboard text, and I'm in the layout.tsx file. We'll give this a class name, set the height to full. The background will be neutral 50. We'll give it a grid layout, and we'll make the columns 12. Click save. And let me just make sure we can see that a little better. Perfect. Okay. And then we want an aside over here and the main content listed there. So I'm going to highlight and copy this children, put it in the main HTML tag, paste it, and we'll add aside. And I'll just add a side text there. Perfect. So now we see that. We give this a class name of border right, and I'll set the border to dotted, and we'll make the color border neutral 200. And you see the border there on screen. Perfect. And we'll give it some more styling. We'll set the height to full, just to see what that looks like. Perfect. That. I want the columns to span 2. Just add the color back again. Probably should have just left it. Yeah, that's fine. We'll set the width to full, the items to flex, centered, the direction to column. All right, and you see that move the aside text to the middle of the screen. So that's perfect. And then now let's add an aside itself. We'll remove this color. All right, in the components directory, let's add a folder named dashboard. And inside of dashboard, we'll add a file named aside.tsx. Yeah. And we'll go export default function aside. And it says aside. Now let's import it inside of the dashboard layout. Import aside and make sure it's coming from @_components dashboard aside. And we can replace the text with the component. There, and now we see it, and I just distinguished the text so that it'll be easy to see that we did import it in. Before I style the aside, let me go ahead and set up the main configuration, not configuration, the styling for the main tag or the main content. So we'll add a class name. We'll go column span 10. We want it to span 10 columns just to make sure that is correct. We'll set the background to blue. Okay. And just set the width to full. And I'm going to make this a grid layout, I think. Actually, I'm gonna remove grid for right now. And I think the color looks fine. Well, excuse me, the width of it looks fine. Let me just make sure it looks suffice on
Large view. Open up a new one. /dashboard. Press enter. And perfect. All right, so we have our side, 2 columns, the main 10 columns, the overall page is 12. perfect. And I don't need the credentials. I'm gonna keep the auth up. And this is the website that we are cloning. I'm making the dashboard now. We've already built the header, excuse me, the top nav. A I call this a notification, the hero, quote unquote, if you will. That's what it looks like right here. You can always make it a little bigger if need be, but I think it's fine. And then we're going to add the categories next, a search, and a pickup and delivery. But I've shifted to the back end so we can dynamically pull this information in versus hard coding it or putting it in a array of objects and pulling it that way. So just changing it up a little bit. So we're going to bring in the authentication next. All right, so we'll go back.
Back to this. And we'll remove this background color. And we can shift our focus to building out and styling the aside. So the aside is going to be rather simple. We'll make it responsive with icons, and we'll also use path name, I'm thinking, to indicate that we're on that specific route. Um, so you know what? Instead of having all of the data, we'll make this as modular as possible. So we're not pulling in the hard coding the data. We'll have an easy way to change it if need be. So let's do this. Let's go ahead and install some icons. And I want to use Lucid React instead of React icons. It's a little more versatile for this project. So we'll go npm LUI, no, excuse me, LUCIDE React. Press enter. And I think that it's almost finished. Let's just make sure that it took. I think it did, but we'll make sure. Go to the package.json, and yeah, it took, so we're good. All right, so I think, like I was mentioning, we'll have the aside, which will be the bar itself, and then the data, we're going to store that in a separate file, so it'll be easy for us to update or manipulate it as need be. So we'll close that out. And inside of the components, we have aside. We'll add a file named aside data. Add that now. Let's go aside dash data dot tsx. So this is going to be the data, such as the routes and the nav items and all of that good stuff. We're going to store it here, and then inside of the main aside file will be the actual design or the styling, and then we'll loop over and use an item to display each of the items inside of the aside. So let's start with importing type, and this is the type that we're going to bring in is element type, and that's going to come from React. And I'm going to need a few icons, and that's going to come from I already had I guess I installed React icons on the front end. Missed that, my bad. But anyway, we're gonna use Lucid React, and I know I need a few icons. Um, I want the dashboard, layout dashboard, um, list ordered. Yep. Let's go with um, and then we'll just have settings. We'll have more than this eventually, but for right now, this will be enough to get us started. And then we're going to create the type for the nav item, which will be the links and the text that we're going to display to the user. So we'll go export type, and this will be for nav item. Yeah, we'll make it nav item. And we'll need a label, label. Label will be a string. A href, it will be a string. And we'll also need a icon, which will be a element type. Perfect. And then we want to export this and utilize it inside of the aside. So we'll go export const, and this is going to be the dashboard underscore nav. And we want an array of nav items. Should I get that syntax right? There we go. Perfect. And then we'll need a bunch of objects. And I'm just going to do one and copy them and just update them. So the first one is going to be a label. The first label will be dashboard. The href will be slash dashboard. And then finally, the icon will be layout dashboard. Perfect. And then we need two more, one for the categories and one for the settings. So categories, settings. So we'll go cat queries, slash cat queries, cat queries. There we go. And then the icon for that is list ordered. And the last one is going to be settings. TTINGS. And the URL is going to be slash settings. And then we'll change this to a settings icon. Let's save. Perfect. So now we have our data. We're ready to bring this data into the actual aside. I appreciate everyone stopping by today. It isn't unnoticed. Genuinely appreciate it. If you have any questions, feel free to ask away. I will be happy to answer those. So let me do this first. Inside of the lib directory, let's create a type that we can use throughout the project. So inside of lib, let's add a file named cn.ts. And we'll go export function cn. And we want to capture the parts. And this is going to be an array, which is a string, or an array as a string. We go false, null, undefined. This cares for all of the various potential scenarios. Inside of that, we'll close the yep. And then inside of the curly braces, we're just going to return parts dot filter, and we'll be grabbing a boolean dot join. Empty string. I think that looks pretty good. Next up, we'll go back to the actual aside itself. We need a few imports to make the magic happen with the aside. Next, we'll start by marking this as use client because we're going to use some client side hooks. In this one, we'll be using the use path name, which is going to help us determine what path or what the URL is, gathering it from the parameter, so that if we're on that, if the href equals the path, then we're going to highlight that link. So we'll mark this as use client. Then we'll bring in link. That's going to come from next navigation. We'll also use path name as I mentioned, and that should be coming from next nav. I'm going to bring in cn, which is the utility function that we just created. And finally, we'll need to bring in the dashboard nav. And that's the dashboard underscore nav should be coming from /aside data. Let me first start by creating the function that's going to let us know if we're on the specific path so that we can highlight the link and text. Hold on 1 second. let's create the function that will determine if we are on the path and allow us to distinguish a indicator that we're on that path. So we'll go function is path. Yeah, that'd be fine. I'll write it like this. So inside of this is path. Make that active. Is path isn't good enough. So and it will be a string, of course. So we'll go path name will be string. The href will be a string as well. And then inside of the function itself, just to keep it simple, we'll say if the path name is equal to the href, and remember to have three equals, we want to return true. And if it is not, or excuse me, if the path name starts with, and well, this is a built-in JavaScript method, if it starts with href or ends with dot slash, or href is href plus, I think it should be in parentheses, yeah, slash, we want to return true. Otherwise, we are going to return false. And basically what this is saying is that if the path name equals to href, we want to return true. And if the path name starts with href slash ends with slash, then we're going to return true with that. Otherwise, it will be false, and we shouldn't have anything indicated there at that point. So I could separate this into its own separate file, but I'm going to keep it within this same file for simplicity purposes because this is going to be a fairly large project. So I'm just going to create a function that's going to represent the button that will be used to indicate what we have on screen. So tell you what, I think it might make more sense. Let's go ahead and style the aside first, and then we'll come back and add it so we can see it come to life, if you will, on screen. So we'll go class name, and this is going to be dynamic because we have the potential of there being something active or not. So we'll go class name with the curly braces, and then we're going to use the cn utility that we created. And the initial styling that will always be there no matter what is we're going to set the height to full, and it helps if I put that in a parenthesis of some sort. And we'll set the background color to white, the width to be full, and on the X, we'll set the padding to 2. On the Y, we'll set it to 4. And on large devices, we'll set the padding on the X to 3. And then notice you've seen a quick little shift with it based on that styling that we just added. So now let's have a simple little logo area. I'll remove aside and replace it with a div. Um, all right. This is going to be the actual logo, but for right now, we'll just make it a span that reads admin. And inside of this div, let's just give it a class name, margin bottom. Let me save it so I can see it. There we go. A margin bottom of 4. And we'll go flex. Items will be centered. We're going to justify center. You see it shift over. And on large, we'll set it to justify start. Okay, let me see it there. T. There we go. And as I mentioned, this is going to be a logo eventually, but for right now, I'm just going to add admin. And I think I want to have something right next to it. So add a div. And this will have be a self-closing div because I won't have anything inside of it. We'll set the height to 8, the width to 8. We'll go rounded. And we'll set the background color to neutral. 900. Yeah, there we go. And it's just a little block indicator right there. I can make that a little smaller. Make it 6. Okay. And then we'll give this margin left of 3. And make it 2. There. And we'll make it hidden. And on large devices, we'll go inline block. That way, that kind of gives it a flex appearance on large devices and small devices. As you can see, is hidden. And then we'll make the font of it semi-bold. Let me remove this so I can see what it looks like. There. All right. All right, so now underneath that div is where we want to house the navigation links, the nav item links that we're about to add in, which will give us the ability to navigate to different routes within the app. And so we'll add a nav tag with a class name of space on the Y of 1. And we're going to loop over the dash nav array of objects. And yeah, we'll loop over that, and then we'll build out the nav buttons, and we'll have it visible on screen. So let's do that. So we know if we want to perform any JavaScript, we have to pass in the curly braces inside of the JSX. And I'm going to grab the dash underscore nav, which is the array of objects that we created in the aside data. And we'll go dash nav dot map. And we're just going to map over. And for each one, we're going to name an item. And we need to display something to make sure this is working. I'm just going to add a div, give it a key of item.id, or no, item.label. And then let's just go item.label. And you can see the 3 labels that are within the that are within the dash nav. And we know that we have a label, we have a icon. You can see those right here. I don't have to think about them. We have a href, icon, and a label. So let's present those in a more stylish manner. But we do see that it is working, and that's perfect. So I'm going to create a separate component or function that will be a component, if you will, for the dash nav, and I'm just going to make it a button. So we'll go function nav ction nav button. And inside of this, we're going to return a link. It has a href. The items that we need to pass inside of this button are going to be, of course, a href, a label, a icon, which will be a icon or be presented as an icon with a capital I, and then we also want to pass in active. And then this is going to come from the nav button props that we need to create that we haven't created just yet. I just realized that. So let's go type nav button props. And inside of it, we'll have a href, which will be a string, a label, which will be a string, an icon, which we know is a React element, React.element type. And then finally, we'll need to just indicate if it is active or not. So we'll make that a Boolean, of course, because it's either active or it isn't. Now we'll pass this as the nav button props. And yeah, I see it yelling at me because we have a link with no href, but we don't care for that now. So the link href will obviously be href. And the, that's this, we can remove this. And we actually can remove this div and we'll replace it with the nav button. Nav button. And of course that's self-closing. We need it to have a few things. I'm just going to get rid of this error for right now. The first is going to be a key, and that's going to be item dot, I think I said label, but I'm going to make it a href. And then the href is going to be item dot href. All right, we see that cares for the error. Now we have a few more things that we need to display just to get something on screen. I'm going to add in the span. And in that, we'll pass in the label. And then we'll come back to the nav button and we'll say the label is going to be equal to item.label. Click save, and now we see those listed there. Um, yeah, that'll work. Let's see it coming out. Should I need flex column? No, it's not gonna work like that. We'll come back and do that in a minute. So let's finish. Go ahead and styling out the rest of the items here. So we have the span, and we also need the span for the text. But let's go ahead and add some styling for the actual buttons itself. So with this link, we'll give it a title. Nope, title of label and this is going to be active. If it is page, otherwise it is going to be undefined. Okay. And then inside of it next, we'll need to give it some more styling. We'll go with class name, and we're going to have the brackets. We'll use the CN utility, and then we'll say group, flex, item centered. You can see it's starting to come to life now. We'll set the gap to 0. And on large devices, we'll make the gap 3. Left for 0 for now, of course. We'll go rounded, Excel, padding on the X of 3, on the Y of 2. And we'll say transition. Yeah, you can see that begin to come to life, if you will. And then next, we'll set the text to neutral. Neutral 700. And on hover, I want the background to be neutral 100. See that now. Probably ought to give it some more padding. But, I got to add the icons in as well, so I'm not going to bother it just yet. But for now, we'll just do justify center. Okay. And then on large devices, we'll set it to justify start. Okay. And if it is active, I want the background color to be distinguished so we'll know that we're on that particular route. We'll just set it to background neutral. We'll make it 200 and see what this looks like. We'll set the text to neutral 900. And then we'll go ring 1. And we'll set the color to ring neutral 300. Okay. And then now, last but not least, let's go ahead and before we add the icon, I do need to add one more indicator here. We'll just say data active. And if it is active, we'll say active true. Otherwise, it is false. Okay. Now, inside of the actual link itself, we'll add the icon and give it a class name as well. We'll use the CN utility. Initially, we'll have the height to 5, the width to 5, and then we'll say shrink 0. Oh, duh. It wouldn't go here. It'll go here. Mm, say why you yelling? Okay. Um, Let me do this. I do want to add this into this next, and then we'll come back and fix its frustration with us. We'll go icon is equal to item dot icon. There. I probably need to do something with the padding on this too. And then we'll say active is active. No, I named it is path active. Sorry. And I need to pass in path name that I don't think I brought in yet. So we'll go const path name is equal to use path name. And that's from next navigation. Yeah, it is. All right. And then this is going to take two arguments. The first one is going to be the actual path name, if I can. Or it can be item.href. Click save. All right, so you can see that we are on that specific route. That's why it is indicated. Um, but let me style this a little bit because it is flowing over and I don't want it to do that. So let me style this span for the label just a little bit. So I think on large devices, let's set this to, I'm gonna make it hidden, but let me just go ahead and just see what it looks like before I hide it. So we'll go set the text size to small, which it should be small by default now that I think about it. On large, we're gonna make it inline block, but initially we want it hidden. Okay. And let's just see what it looks like on large devices.
All right, so that's what it looks like on large devices. And on small devices,
We have this layout design. So that's about what we were going for. Perfect. That's the link. Yeah, I'm cool with that. That works. I'm just making sure that I like it or that it fits what we're going after, and I think it's fine. So, okay. All right, so that kind of cares for the aside. I don't think there's anything else that I need to do with this. Let's just add the settings route and categories route to make sure. So this is the components. This is dashboard. Make sure that is inside of this directory. This is a shared layout. Hopefully it didn't break anything. Let's make sure. Yep. Sorry, buddy. Get rid of that. All right. So in app dashboard, let's add a, what did we name this? I think we named it categories. Dashboard, aside data. Settings with an S, categories. Okay. So let's go app dashboard. We'll create a directory named categories. And we'll also add a directory named settings. And inside of settings, we'll make a page.tsx. And we'll go export default function settings page, setting page, settings page, return div hello from settings page. And then we'll come back and inside of categories, We'll add a page.tsx, export default function categories page, and return a div hello from categories page. Save. We can close this one, close this one. Let's test it out. So if I click on this, it should redirect me to dashboard slash categories. And this one will be slash settings. So let's just see. Okay. Hello from the settings page. Hello from the categories page. Perfect. All right. So that cares for that. So I think next I want to take care of the authentication that we haven't done just yet. But we can care for that on the actual page itself. Or do we want it in the layout? Let me see something. It's a div, header, class name, a width of full, background of Amber 300. Yeah, that'll work. We can make the actual header here and have the login, logout button listed there. And we'll also do maybe have a hello whomever the user is on this page as well too. So yeah, that'll work. We could do that. 1 second. work on that now. Set the height to maybe 12. What about 14? Yeah, that's cool. So flex item center. Justify end. Padding on the X of 4. Cool. So we'll just add a border and a authentication indicator right there. Um, but how do we want to do this is the question. I think we'll just do it as a make it a little modular by having the user off in a second file and then bringing it in as we need it. So let's do that. So inside of the lib directory, let's add a file named user auth.ts. And this will be marked as use server because we need to use this outside of this file. We'll import sign in, and I should get some IntelliSense. Yep. Sign in, make sure it's coming from @/auth. And I'm also going to bring in sign out. And we'll go export async function. We'll make this one sign in with Google. Sign in with Google, yep. And then we'll just go await sign in. And that's going to be Google. And then we'll need a export async function sign out with sign out user sign out loser. And then we'll just go await and just call sign out. Cool. All right, and then now we want to bring this in to the actual header itself. So let's go ahead and create that now. We can close this out. We can close out the aside data. Inside of components, inside of header, we'll put this in the dashboard. We'll go header.tsx. We'll just do a const for this one, header. We'll place this div with a header tag. Go header listed there. Class name of width of full, a height of full. We'll go border bottom. Make that border dotted. And the color of it will be neutral 200. We'll set the background to base 100 as well. Click save. Let's just see what this looks like for now. We'll go to the layout and import header. Be sure it's coming from component/dashboard. And then I'm just going to replace this header tag with the header. Click save. There, we see it there. So I'll replace this and go div flex item centered. Set the height to full. There we go. And we'll go justify and perfect. So I actually probably can remove it from this. Let's see. Yeah, I guess because I set it in the actual header itself, I didn't need it there. So that's cool. All right, and let's add a user authentication. So I probably should put this in a shared folder, but for right now it'll be fine where it is. We can always come back and change it later. So inside of the dashboard, let's add a file named user auth.tsx. And in this file is where we're going to hold the actual authentication for the user. If they are logged in, we'll show something. If they aren't logged in, we're going to show something else. So we'll create a export default function and we'll name this user auth, and we'll return a div. We'll just say user auth. Save. Now let's import this inside of the header. Let's go import user auth. Make sure it comes from /user auth. And I'll just replace header with user auth. Perfect. All right, so inside of this, we're going to just keep it simple. And I'm sorry, in the wrong file. Inside of this, we're going to keep it simple. What I want to do is if there's no user, we're going to return the sign in form, and that's all that you're going to see. And if there is a user, then I'm going to show sign out, and I think that'll be it. I'm not going to worry about displaying any user data. So because we're going to be utilizing the server functionality, I'll need to make this component asynchronous. So we'll go export default async. Let's import the auth object. That should be coming from @auth. And then we'll need to make a sign in and sign out form. We can go ahead and do that now as well. That way we'll have something to show to the user. So I think first we can do the sign in button because I don't think we have a session going on this. And then next we'll do sign out. And I also want a pending indicator for the button so that if it is in a pending state, this could be a reusable button. If it's in a pending state, I want it to show a loading animation, if you will. So got a few things to do. So let's do this first. Let's create the sign in and sign out button. So inside of this, I'll just go sign in btn.tsx, and then we'll do sign out btn.tsx. And then for both of these will be an export default function. This will be a sign out btn button. And we're just going to return for right now. Actually, we could just go ahead and make it a form. And I'll need to pass in the a button. And we'll create a reusable button in a moment. And we'll go export default function sign in button. We're just going to return div, no, not a div, a form. And then now we just need to create the pending button. So I'll do that now. And inside of this, we'll make a pending dash button.tsx. We'll mark this as use client. We'll go ahead and bring in the cn utility from @/lib that we created. And I also want to grab the use form, I think it is status, yep, from React DOM. That way I'll have the ability to get access to the pending object, which will allow me to show if it's in a pending state, a loading or a spinning indicator. So I'll need to add some code here. So we'll create a type variant, variant. It's going to be equal to primary. I'm going to have a primary variant, also a neutral variant, utral, and a ghost variant. I'm basically just creating my own reusable buttons, kind of like you would with Chat CN, but they come reusable and customizable out of the box. I'm just creating my own, if you will. That's going to be the color variant. I'm going to have a size variant as well, and it's going to either be small or medium. And then now we'll need to create an interface for props. So we'll go interface, props, extends, react dot button, HTML attributes. Yep. And we're just going to pass in HTML button. I think this is all BUTT button element. Yeah, that's it. And then inside of that, we want a label, which will be a string. The variant, which we may or may not pass in, but I want the option there, will be variant. And then last but not least will be size, which is optional as well. It's going to be the size that we created right here. Perfect. All right, and then now let's just create the pending button. So we'll go export default function pending button. And we'll go ahead and distinguish the props. And then we'll have a label. The variant by default, variant, yep, is going to be primary. The size initially is going to be small. It will be SM. We'll pass in class name so that we have the ability to update the class name should we choose to. We'll destructure props, of course. And we've already passed in the actual prop itself. So, okay, so we're good. So now the next thing I want to do is inside of the function, I want to get access to the use form status. So we'll go const, and I want access to just pending from it. Use form status, yep. And we'll pass in pending. And then I'll just go ahead and add the return, TURN. We'll be returning a button. Okay. And we'll need the label. And we'll need a little bit of JavaScript inside of this. So we'll go pending. If it is pending, what we want is a span. Actually, this span could be self-closing. And Tailwind CSS makes this a little easy, so we'll just go loading, and then we'll go loading spinner, and we'll go rounded extra large. Click save. Perfect. So now let me actually, well, let's do it like this. Let's go const variant, variant class. So we're going to pass it this information like this because it could potentially be multiple sizes, or it could be different variants, and we don't want to hard code it. We want to have flexibility with it so that it can give us some flexibility, if you will. So we'll go variant, if it is primary, we'll go primary. If so, we want it to be BTN, and I have Daisy UI installed as well, so you're going to see some Daisy UI naming conventions, BTN primary. I set that up in yesterday's video. Rounded extra large. The next variant could be neutral, neutral. And if it is neutral, we want BTN neutral, or we'll say BTN ghost, GHOST, rounded extra large. And then the last one will be const size class. It's going to be size is equal to either small, well, if it is small, excuse me, then it needs to be BTN small, or we'll just pass in an empty string. All right, perfect. So now inside of the button, we'll give it a type of submit. And then we'll go disabled will be pending, initially to be disabled. And we'll pass the props. And then we'll finally need the class name. And this will be dynamic because we'll be using CN. And we'll go variant class, size class. And we'll set the gap to 2. And then we'll also pass in class name. Okay, so I think this is cool. So now we can utilize this inside of our sign in and sign out buttons. So I'm gonna go to sign out first. At the top, we're going to bring in import sign. This one is sign out, so we'll go sign out user. And then we're going to import pending button, and that is coming from / pending dash button, which is what we just created. And then inside of the form, we're going to pass in pending button, which is that component. And it is yelling at us because we got to give it some additional information. The label for it is going to be sign out. Sign out. The variant for this one will be neutral. We'll make the size small. And the form action for this will be sign out user. All right. And then now I need to do the same thing for sign in. And we'll start by importing sign in with Google. Make sure that's coming from @/lib/user dash auth. And then we'll also need to bring in the pending button. Sorry about that. All right, and then inside of the form, we're going to bring in pending button. And should we go ahead and close it? The label will be sign in. The size of this is going to be small, and the form action will be sign in with Google. We'll click save, and we should be done with that. So we can close both of these out, and we'll close out the user auth. No, we're gonna keep that open. And we'll close out the aside, keep the user auth open, close out the layout, the page. So all we have is the header and the user auth. All right, perfect. So now let's go ahead and bring those into the user auth. So we've already imported auth, and we can import the sign in button, and also import the sign out button. So we've made the function asynchronous. Now let's get access to the session. So we'll go const session is equal to await auth. And I'm going to say const user is equal to session question mark dot user. And this is just going to let us know if we have a user. And if there is no user, we want to return the sign in button, which is what we see on screen. And then what should happen is we'll begin to see a loading indicator there and all that good stuff. So looks good. That's perfect. And otherwise, I think we could just make this sign out button. All right, let's test this out. I've been having to tweak this a little bit for because I've been using the same Google project and a deployed project and a few others. So I may have to go back and make some changes, but I think we're good. So we see the loading indicator. Now it's just asking us to sign in. Perfect. Now it's reading sign out. And so just to make sure this is working properly, let's just see something. We'll go to the dashboard page, and I'll make this a asynchronous function. Let's import auth from @/auth, and then we'll say const session is equal to await auth, and then get const user email is equal to session dot user dot email, and let's just see if it shows our session email listed here. So we'll remove dashboard page and go user email, save, and boom, we see the JA dash. So that's working properly. Now let's check the Prisma Studio because the user should be persisted in the database warm country. Yeah, we have it still running. So let me check that right quick. Ooh, I didn't mean to open up a new one. I meant to close it. Right there. Sorry. All right, let me go to sorry, localhost 555, and we see we have one user, and there's the user. Perfect. All right, so we have authentication set up. We have admin routing set up with a couple routes. We can see the sign in, signed out user. We have login indicators. If I click sign out, we should get a loading indicator. Yep. And then I don't really like that color that much. Let me go to the pending button. I think I'll change that, but I'm not going to worry about it too much now. So let me go be a parent and get my son Aru on the bus, and I will see y'all later on today.